Check, check.
Welcome to the stage, founder and CEO of Altimeter Capital, Brad Gerstner, and Chairman, CEO, and co-founder of iHeartMedia Inc., Bob Pittman.
Woo! Yeah. I mean, it ain't Diplo, but we're going to have fun.
Diplo is from Mississippi, though, so it's another Mississippi boy we all...
I mean, it seems appropriate that they schedule you against Diplo.
This is the Mississippi Hour.
Wow, Summit, great to be here. Great to be here. I have so many friends, so many memories. I think my son's in the room. I hope he's probably at Diplo. Oh, there he is.
There he is.
There he is. I mean, you could have gone to Diplo. I wouldn't have been offended. But the kid literally grew up at Powder Mountain with a lot of you. And so now he's 15 and look at him. But it's great to be here. And one of the things I always loved about Summit, Bob, is make no small plans. And, I know that you and I, when we talk, we kick that around a lot. What brings you here? What do you love so much about Summit?
I think this is one of the great curiosity festivals. And it's just, tell me something I don't know. Tell me something I wasn't even thinking of. Tell me something that's out of this world. And by the way, it can be crazy small or crazy big. It can be the future. It can be the past. And I think everybody here is bound by that sharing of their curiosity.
Hear, hear. Hear, hear. Well, let me tell you all a little something about Bob Pittman. So Bob is an Enneagram 7. I know this because we've been roommates at Burning Man for a decade. As an Enneagram 7, Bob is a visionary. He is an enthusiast. He's a leader, a founder, a CEO. I think the thing probably that defines you the most is your insatiable curiosity. And, in exploring where that comes from, Bob comes from a small town in Mississippi. His dad was a Methodist minister. His parents fought desegregation in Mississippi.
Actually, we fought segregation.
Or segregation, sorry.
We're on the right side of that.
Fought for desegregation.
We're not one of those.
Oh my God. Well said. But they did it at a time that it wasn't popular. And you grew up with parents who were curious. And I think it is the basis of our almost 20-year friendship. And I think that's really your superpower. Number one, your incredible generosity to friends and to strangers alike. And secondly, it's just your undying curiosity. So, what do you got to say about me?
Well, now that you ask, Brad's on his number 7. I happen to be a number 7. Brad's a number 7, but I'm sort of the astrology guy. So I'm the Capricorn, and I'm not sure, Brad?
The Taurus.
The Taurus, well, you can tell that immediately. He is curious, stubborn, smart, resourceful, hardworking, caring, grateful. Curious is the big word. He's also, we bond over being poor kids. Poor kid from Indiana, washed boats on the lake. Managed to get through law school, Deputy Secretary of State in Indiana. This is a full-on Hoosier. He is Harvard MBA, went on to do some entrepreneurial ventures. He was, by the way, you might not know this, the cruise king of America for a while. How long were you the cruise king?
I started one of the first online travel businesses that built the first cruise vacation package booking engine for Expedia and Travel. I would say 2 years. Dara Khosrowshahi bought that business.
How many cruises
we
did you
sold
book?
$1 billion worth of cruises in the year 2000.
Wow.
That's a lot of fucking cruises.
So this is $1,010,000,000. He is, you know him as a great investor. You see him on CNBC. He's done extraordinary stuff. He was, and you may not know this, he started his fund in 2008, right after Lehman Brothers went bankrupt. All of his plans were dashed. He wound up with less than $5 million to start the fund. Everybody said, you're insane. I went to visit him. He was living in a basement. He sold everything he had. He had a new baby. He was a pilot. He got rid of his airplane. He stopped doing any hobbies. He just was committed to making that 5 million work. Today you got 22 billion at work, and so it actually worked out well. But I think what it says about Brad is that he has a vision, and he's not going to be knocked off the vision. Every one of his friends said, "You're crazy. You were leaving a great opportunity. You were making a lot of money. Why do you need to go do this? Wait later. You can do it. There's always later in life." And he had a vision. He had an idea, and he did it. And that's sort of Brad. Everything about Brad. That's
enough.
Well, no. I have to say one more. I have to say one more thing. In spite of all that, in spite of how hard he works, or maybe because of it, he's also a wonderful dad. And it's nice to have his son Link here with us.
Thank you. Well, Summit is all about curiosity. So, we thought today that we would dive into some of the biggest issues of the day. Bob, why don't you set up the conversation for today?
Yes, sir. It is to talk today. We're going to hit on innovation. We're going to hit on human progress. And then we're going to get to how that ties together into the age of AI. And we're going to break it down in 3 parts. Context setting. Brad, of course, can't resist telling us about the 200 years or 2,000 years of innovation in 1 minute. Yes. He also look at the psychology of innovation and AI and where we are and why it's so consequential. We also want to spend a little time talking about what are the ramifications of that, sort of bigger than the business ramifications of AI. So, Brad, you're on, and you've got slides.
Yeah. So, just a little context setting. You guys won't spend too much time on this ship looking at this. So, I thought it'd be useful. This slide to me is so profound. 1,800 years. Okay. Almost zero growth in GDP. And then, just after the year 1800, you have this parabolic move in global GDP. Why do we care? GDP is what we produce with a fixed amount of labor and capital. There are only so many people in the world, only so much capital in the world. All human prosperity is measured by GDP. It's the things, the excess to survival that we can produce as humanity. And it's all occurred in the last 200 years. And if you look at all of the curves about human prosperity, poverty, almost everybody was impoverished in the year 1800. It's fallen off a cliff.
By the way, Brad, you also, just 100 years ago, most people in America were living in a boarding house, a shared home with unrelated families. And when somebody had a job, and when they had a job, everybody else in the boarding house took care of their kids, and they went out and made some money or got something, brought it back to everybody living in that boarding house. Most people were too poor to get married. Marriage just was sort of a part of the middle class. It was not what was the norm in America just 100 years ago.
And so I think it's so fascinating. I mean, vaccination, education, general health, women dying in childbirth, etc. Everything has gotten dramatically better over the course of the last 50 years. And if you look at the number of years it takes to double human prosperity, okay, GDP, it's gone from over 500 years, right? So basically, most people alive for the history of this planet, there have been 110 billion people who have occupied the planet before us, and 99% of them never saw a single invention in their entire life. Their entire life, right, was about survival. So, 1776, Wealth of Nations, and it was about free market capitalism. It said, hey, if we had division of labor, we allowed people to compete, it would probably, if we all just did the thing that was in our self-interest, it would probably benefit us the most. And so I'm going to fast forward now 200 years. We get the microcomputer. We get the Netscape browser in 1996. We get 10 Blue Links, a system of information retrieval the world had never known, right? Only 10 years later, we all get supercomputers in our pocket. Now 6 billion people on the planet are walking around with a supercomputer. And let me stop there This is the prelude to artificial intelligence. And if there's one thing to take away, it's a non-linear system, right? For almost all of humanity, nothing changed. Then it started getting slightly better in 1800, and there's been a parabolic increase in the cycle time on innovation over the course of the last 20 years.
And what drives it? One thing: convenience. Since the days of the caveman, we've been looking to make our life easier. And if you look at products that work, it ain't quality that sells, it's convenience. Anybody in the room ever remember a VHS and a Betamax? Betamax was the better quality, but VHS had one tape instead of two tapes for a movie. So guess what won? VHS. The microwave oven would have never happened had it been about quality. It was about convenience. By the way, the phone, the supercomputer in our pocket, is a horrible phone compared to my wired line that is so great. It never screws up. I got everybody there. Why do we have that? Because it's more convenient. And I've never seen ever a product that wasn't about giving you more convenience. When I was at AOL, we called it convenience in a box. We said all we're doing is taking stuff people already like to do, and we're making it more convenient. And if we do that well, that's what people want. And indeed, by the way, why did the phone work? Because I'd rather have it in my pocket than on a desktop. I'd rather have it small. I'd rather have apps. I don't want to do work. And so, again, it's that one thing. And if you go back about the history of, whether it was the cotton gin or the steamship, it was about convenience.
It's Lincoln and I, our family has partnered with Give Power to do service trips every year. And we're in Nicaragua 2 years ago. And Nicaragua, for anybody who's been there, is a very impoverished country. And so I wanted to understand when, like what it was relative to the United States 100 years ago. It turns out that the GDP per capita of Nicaragua and the United States 100 years ago was almost identical. Think about that. Today, the GDP per capita of the United States to Nicaragua is 100x. Why? Right? We're living at a time where I think there's a lot of controversy about capitalism. Right? There's a controversy, like it's easy for us to focus on the problems that exist with the distribution of wealth or other things. And we're going to talk about some of those things later in the chat. But what I worry about is the attack on the thing that produces the prosperity, which pulls people out of poverty, which lifts people out of illiteracy, which allows people to live longer, right? And the age of AI, I would argue, is going to accelerate all of these trends, which is going to also produce some geopolitical issues.
Well, and look, and I think, to put a finer point on it too, is that, what the human condition is, we don't like change. And when people feel threatened, they want to go into a hole and they want to stop it. They want to fight the system. Look at the truck drivers today. They listen to the news stories about autonomous driving. How could you feel good about your job? And how could you feel good about the government that's allowing that to happen? How could you feel good about companies that are making that happen? You begin to lose confidence in the system. You want to shut it down. And we see it again and again and again that when in times like this, when you have by the way, when the internet came along, by the way, in cable TV, when we started, went from 3 channels to 30 channels. There were a lot of people who say, I told my mother, you need to get cable. And she goes, honey, I can't watch the 3 channels I have now. Why would I want that? It is, you're in this world of retreat, and clearly what we're getting ready to go into is going to scare the bejesus out of a lot of people, and going to Brad's point, endanger people supporting the very system that nurtures that and actually allows them to get out of poverty and get a better life and do better.
Let's talk a little bit about, the what next. So I was at a dinner in 2015 for the Monterey Aquarium, and Meg Whitman asked Bill Gates this question: haven't all the interesting things already been done? Right? We have the internet, everybody's connected, we have mobile devices, we have social networks. And Gates said, we haven't even started. He's like, computers are effectively dumb calculators. We ask them to do a task and it responds to the task. We're moving, he said, we're moving into the age where machines will think. And so if you think about human innovation, machines have always gotten more powerful, right? We started with a sickle, we ended up with autonomous combines, right? And as those systems get more powerful, they have more impact. So Gates says this in 2015. In 2017, we have this paper, Attention is All You Need. It was a transformative paper about something called a transformer model, which was an architecture to effectively allow a computer to be able to do next character prediction. So we all as human beings, we have a single processor and a single database. We're born, the single processor has potential and it has no data. Over the course of our lives, we gather a lot of data and the processor picks up speed, but it's still a single processor and a single database. As we get older, we get wiser, but unfortunately, our database starts leaking data and our processor slows down. And the problem is that the reason we made very little innovation is that human who knew a lot would die. And somebody would have to start again with zero data and with a new processor. Now imagine that we're going to have a collective brain of all of the data that's ever existed in the history of time and will ever exist, with trillions of parameters that can then look across those things and do next word, next pixel, next video prediction. This is the proxy for human intelligence. And so this is a friend of mine named Noam Brown took next word prediction, next character prediction, and he said, what if we applied what's called time scaling inference? And he wrote a paper called Pluribus, which is how we won the game of six-handed poker, a very complex game. And again, it pushed forward the body of work around thinking. Of course, we had the ChatGPT moment in November of 22. Rather than getting 10 blue links, this magic that Google produced. Google changed the world with 10 blue links, but really it was a card catalog. It was just the largest card catalog the world had ever known. We had to go into those links. We had to discover the information. Well, now all of that information will be read, right? The brain will know the answer to the information. And now we see even bigger and bigger supercomputers. Supercomputers for the next 10 years that are going to be built that are so big that Amazon just bought a nuclear reactor. We're going to have to power these machines with 2 and 3 gigawatt nuclear and gas power plants in order to run the brain. And so we saw a couple weeks ago a new engineering agent called Devin that writes software for you. So think about Copilot. Copilot for engineers is I start typing in a line of code and it auto-completes it, right? Kind of like Google does for you today. Now imagine we're going to have autonomous engineers like Devin, where I don't type in anything. I just ask it to complete a task. Build a website that allows you to book a cruise. Allow me to pay in Bitcoin, make it hip. And Devin just goes off and does it. We're entering into an age of abundance like we've never seen. So think about this, right? Rather than a prompt saying, tell me something about Elon Musk, we're going to say, explore the causes of Lyme disease and recommend molecules that we may want to test that would help us remediate the effect, right? And so when you think about the AI super cycle and the collection of all human knowledge, this is not the start of this parabolic curve. This is the continuation of the acceleration that started, over 150 years ago. And this will be bigger than the internet itself. This will be dramatically bigger than mobile devices because we're moving from a system of information retrieval and collection to a system where unlimited number of computers can think on our behalf. So Bob, you and I have been talking about this for a couple years now. And we spend a lot of time thinking about what it means for my friends back in Indiana, your friends in Mississippi, and the dangers and the fear, that this stokes. When you hear this, do you feel like, having been, helped lead through the beginning of the internet, like you ushered in the age of Google, you could have bought Google for $1 million. Maybe you can tell that story. But does it sound hyperbolic, or do you believe it?
It always sounds hyperbolic, and it never is. If you think about cable TV, when we started, nobody had any idea that television would turn out as it is. Netflix, everybody thought this a little thing. No one knew it was going to take over the world. By the way, it did, because it's more convenient. You could exactly the show you want when you want it. You don't have to wait for somebody to schedule it. Convenience to play again. Every one of these, when we were at AOL, we were saying, okay, what's going to work on it? And that's where we came up with the convenience construct, that anything people do that we can make more convenient. A chat room, a more convenient way to hang out with someone, but you can be in your underwear eating cereal instead of getting dressed up and going to the bar. Of course it was going to work. And I came down to it, and a couple said, well, maybe you can't do clothes because you have to try them on. Convenience wins. Again, they are looking for that. And I think as we get into this, I think we can't even fathom how big it's going to be. We never can foresee. The one thing you do is you always underestimate. There's a lady named Jerry Laybourne who built Nickelodeon when I was the head of MTV Networks. I put her in charge. My last year there, I did a 5-year plan. And I had a 5-year plan for Nickelodeon. 5 years later, I get a letter, back in the days when you got letters, and I opened up the envelope, and it was a photocopy of that page in the presentation, and she circled and said, "What, you didn't believe?" They had done about 3 times what we had projected in the 5-year plan. And when I did the 5-year plan, people thought I was out of my mind. They thought there was no way it could be that big. And you do it again and again. And I'm sure right now we're looking at AI and saying it's going to replace something. What we're not fathoming is how it's going to change everything. And, now, of course, we get into the other issues about how's that going to scare people and what could derail it. The biggest thing that could derail it is people getting afraid of it and pulling back, and this idea of capitalism. My God, I hate big companies. I mean, look at, what is it, 50% of young people don't believe in capitalism. They're sort of being left out of it, and they're afraid of it because what's in it for them?
Yeah, so maybe it was late night at Burning Man, but Bob and I...
Or early morning, you never know which way it goes.
Same thing. One of, 20 years ago in Silicon Valley, we did our thing, and Washington, D.C. is 2,800 miles away, and they didn't really pay that close of attention. Today, all the issues of Silicon Valley are now sovereign level issues. It is our national defense. It is our national economic security, right? Whether or not we're going to sell NVIDIA chips to China. This is about the front lines of the China-U.S. relationship. The thing that I fear the most is this, because the gift that creates the prosperity on a global basis is competition, innovation, entrepreneurialism, capitalism. Now, I don't believe in the invisible hand and it's always perfect. That's why we have government, right? Markets do fail, right? But markets are the source of the prosperity that allows us to remediate the failings. So one of the things that I'm working on, and Bob has partnered with me on, is something called Invest America. So today, 70% of people in the United States do not have assets that compound, okay? The folks I grew up with in Indiana, folks he grew up with in Mississippi. So this idea is very simple, right? Because there are a lot of people who talk about the problems, but very few people who proffer the solutions. And one of the things I love about Summit, it's like, do something, right? And as Lincoln, my son, always says to me, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? So here's what we've all partnered up and we're working on. So when you get your Social Security account, you'll get an Invest America account. So every child born, 3.7 million children born in this country a year, they all get a $1,000 investment account invested in the S&P 500. They can't trade it. Think of it as a 401k from birth. Okay? So now they become owners in Apple, in Microsoft, in Amazon, and NVIDIA. They are beneficiaries of the system. Okay? And as
companies they're afraid of, they're now owners of.
That's right. And last week we announced Michael Dell, Lisa Su from AMD, Mark Benioff, Dara Khosrowshahi at Uber, and incredible CEO accounts who all said, we will contribute to the accounts of the children born to our employees. Okay? So we have incredible momentum in Washington with both the leading presidential candidates on both sides in the Senate, on both sides of the House. We've set up a 501c3 that Bob and I are both funding along with a large group of folks that we're going to be educating people on, using it for advocacy. But this is how we get everybody into the game. And if we do this, the result looks something like this. This is a compound interest table, which Warren Buffett calls the eighth wonder of the world. And he says, start with a really small snowball and a really long hill. And there is no longer hill than starting at birth. So what this means is that the kid who's born in inner city Trenton or rural Mississippi, when he shows up in public school in the 7th grade and they want to teach about math or compounding or democracy or capitalism or owning stocks, they're going to say, pull out your phone and open up your Invest America account. Let's talk about how you got $13,000 in that account. Let's talk about what it means to own a small slice of Apple. Let's talk about the compounding that occurs. And if you start with $1,000 and we get $750 added a year, birthday money, bar mitzvah money, your parents Venmoing in $20 a week, 401k matches from your folks' employers, philanthropic contributions to these accounts, you have $14,000 when you're in 7th grade. At 30, you have $175,000, and at 50, you have $1 million. But most importantly, your entire life, you have hope. Right? Your entire life, we tackle the problem of hopelessness in this country. We tackle the problem like you feel like you're an outsider, you don't belong, and that is the crisis. Because if that continues, it threatens democracy, it threatens capitalism, it threatens the engine of prosperity that allows us to pick up everybody and take them along for this great ride. So this is one of the things I just implore everybody, go follow it at Invest America 24 on X. You'll be hearing a lot more about it over the course of the coming months. And the best thing you can do, share it. Right? We're building a movement here. We'll have $25 million. We're going to start supporting advertising this summer and into the fall. And like I said, we're spending a lot of time, in Washington on this issue. There's another issue you and I care about, but go ahead.
Go ahead, jump.
I know our time's short. By the way, I've been told there's going to be a loud siren that goes off in 4 minutes. Some people think this is a muster call.
15 minutes. We're safe.
Oh, we are?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
We have 16 minutes.
Oh, thank God.
I'm watching the countdown.
By the way, I usually disregard those clocks, but there are going to be these loud sirens. It's not a lifeboat drill. They said they were doing this special for Bob and I. They're going to put us head to head with Diplo, and then they're going to have loud sirens at the end of the talk. Okay. So another topic, and we'll save a few minutes here for a question. Here's another topic. What happens when you're fearful about losing your job? You work in a call center, you lose your job. You're a driver, you lose your job to autonomous driving. Go through the list, and we're going to see a lot of this, right? Well, one of the things that happens is the country says, we don't like this immigration stuff. We don't want other people coming to the country. We don't want people to challenge us for our jobs, right? And this happens to be a chart of the number of highly skilled people who want to work in this country, who are sitting on applications, people who are educated at Harvard and Johns Hopkins and all these incredible schools, who are building AI, who want to start a business in this country, who want to come work in this country, who can't get an H-1B visa to work in this country. okay? And it's commingled with the problem at the southern border, okay? So now it's all lumped into the same thing. And what I worry about is that this is the other engine that has made this country particularly special.
It's why we're not Japan. I mean, we should have been, in the 1990s, we should have wound up like Japan, with an absolutely stagnant economy, too many people that you're supporting, not enough workers. The only thing that saved us is immigration. And it saves us again and again and again. This country was built on an influx of people. And if you think about it, why do we love the American dream? Why do we love people in the world saying, wow, I love your music, I love your movies, because they want to come here. Why do we want them to come here? Because we want immigrants. We actually want them. The American dream is our brand. And we want to build that brand of anything can happen here because it's going to get the best and the brightest. And by the way, the most hardworking. There are people who've come here who don't have an education. But the variable they have is they have the drive. They have the drive to come here. They want the desire. And they find a way to succeed and contribute to this country. And without this, we are Japan. By the way, China's going to have this problem. There are a lot of countries that have not built a brand that attracts people. And without the brand that attracts people, you're hit or miss whether you get any immigration, even if you want it. For us, we've got it. We got the Statue of Liberty. We're the beacon. Come on in. Let's drive you in. And without this, we got problems.
But both of these things, and the reason we bring them up is we sit at the precipice of the most magical time in the history of humanity, right? The curve is accelerating. Machines are going to help us solve problems that we never thought we could solve. From cancer to energy storage, to putting a personal assistant in everybody's pocket for free. But the fear that will be engendered by this moment, I think, will be greater than the fear we saw in other moments. We already see it. We see it playing out in populist movements already, and politicians who prey on that fear around these issues. And so we need to skate to where the puck is going to be in 2 or 3 years. Sam Altman the other day said to Lex Friedman that ChatGPT 5 is going to be a step function over 4 that's at least as big as the step function of ChatGPT 4 over 3. The path to AGI is shorter than people think. My friends who've seen ChatGPT 5, which they're working on, I talked to a sovereign leader the other day in the Middle East, and he said after we saw it, we said to each other, oh my God, the world's going to need a lot more compute because of the consumption that will come from this. I mean, just think about this. Google does 10 billion queries a day. We ask Google 10 billion questions a day. It opens the card catalog and it says, here's 10 blue links. All 10 billion of those queries a couple years from now are going to be inference queries that are going to tax a supercomputer and are going to give us answers, right? It's not going to, our kids will laugh at the concept of 10 blue links. They'll be like, you really used a card catalog? And so, I would just say, and then I want to throw it open, maybe some questions, Bob, but I would just say, get on the front lines and understand the fear. The fear will be the consensus opinion that comes out of this moment. And, so as both a venture capitalist, an investor, an entrepreneur, a founder, I'm spending a lot more of my time today in Washington on issues of national security, on issues of AI security, on issues like Invest America, because I think it's imperative that the people who are behind AI are helping to shape some of the problems that are going to be a byproduct of it.
One other thing, just to make sure we've got it all on the table, and you alluded to it, is what are we going to do with the power? Yeah. And where's all this power going to come from? Almost everybody, when they're looking at how we're talking about power grids, is doing it if there's a sort of a stable amount of power usage. It's going to be like this. Yes. And what do we need to do there? And that's we could spend the whole session on that one alone.
Well, again, there are 350 nuclear reactors fission reactors under construction in China. How many in the U.S.? 0, maybe 1 if you count Biden's, investment last week to bring back online a nuclear power plant in Michigan. Okay? If you think that power is the bottleneck to AI, then it seems we have, a country in China that is skating to where the puck is going to be. And it seems the U.S. is wrapped around a regulatory axle again, even though it's the cleanest, most dense power that we could possibly achieve. And that's the exact type of power that we're going to need to drive these data centers. And so that's another, I do a podcast with Bill Gurley called BG2. And this week, that's exactly what we talk about, Bob, which is you cannot have a strategic AI policy at a national level without a strategic energy policy at a national level. They're really tied at the hip. I don't know. We don't have mics to throw around, but if anybody
Let's go questions. We'll repeat them.
Just right here.
I'm an eternal optimist. However, with regards to Invest America,
Yeah.
we're ignoring for a moment how we fund all these 3-point-something million babies.
Yeah.
I read this morning that the average American has $80,000 in savings, which is pretty poor because you can't retire on that. However, if we think about 7% of year compound interest, the $1 million in 50 years represents, in my mind, less than $30,000 of today's dollars. $1 million in 50 years will have the purchasing power of less than $30,000 in today's money. So it looks great to see $1 million in my kid's account in 50 years, but 30,000 is less than the 88,000 that we already managed to save. Where am I getting it wrong?
I think your average, you have to be careful of the average. I think you may be looking at a mean score. I think, what did you say, 70% of the people have nothing. Yeah. Most people are in the red, not in the black in terms of asset value.
Right, and I think the other part of your question is that the dollar is depreciating. Are you saying that $1 million won't be in 50 years what $1 million is today?
7%.
Yeah.
At 7%, money halves in value in roughly 10 years.
Yeah.
50 years is 10, 5 times.
Yeah.
2 to the 5th power is 32.
Yeah. So I would say, like, the fact of the matter is, whether you're investing that in Bitcoin or dollar-denominated stocks or whatever, my point is this. We have to get people into the game, get them financially literate, get an account open. The cold start problem to actually having savings and investment is a massive hurdle for almost every family in this country. Whether or not the rate at which the dollar depreciates, what we're doing with our national debt, these are all additional challenges. I'd be happy to talk to you about it more. But I think that is...
Can I add one thing? I think the key, because I don't want us to leave with the wrong impression, we think this gives them the money they need for their life. I think what we think is this gets them into focusing on financial literacy because they've got something.
Yes.
And they've got nothing now. And I used to run Six Flags theme parks. And what we knew was to get somebody to spend money, you just had to get them to open their wallet one time. The challenge wasn't how much will they spend. The challenge was to get them to open the wallet, spend 10 cents. And I think this is the same principle here, is we get people into, I have something. Now they have a stake, they have a hope, they have a dream. People can add to it. Perhaps it's a lot, but it gets them thinking about the idea of capitalism, and I can own a piece of the system
Here.
as opposed to being out of the system.
Let's keep going.
Thank you.
Hi.
Oh, yeah. And then one
First
back
of all-
here. Oh, yeah. We're going back here, I guess.
Hi there. So first of all, thank you for what you're doing for this country and the world. It's a big deal. I have a funny background and a question that I'm going to take this moment to risk doing in front of all these people. I work with people at risk mentally. So what I think you're doing is fantastic, and I believe in everything you just said at the end, but what we struggle with a lot is in young people, giving them not only that somebody believes in them, but that sense of, belonging and purpose and hopefulness, especially when they come from not the best environment. So we started doing some collaborative things, and I'm just putting it out there to this whole room, the world, to you. If you're open in your fund to looking to partner with mental health kinds of groups and apps that are looking to essentially help support and buoy those who might not have a support network, might be the first in their family to even want an education, might be pulled into professional sports, like I'm working with the NFL to get financial literacy, so base skills, what to do with this gift. Yeah. So just putting it out there.
Listen, it's a great point. We know that people who have a couple important points. Number one, there's something called the snowball effect. There's this misconception in this country that poor people don't save. Poor people who have savings accounts, those cohorts actually save on a percentage basis more than people who are wealthy, okay? Secondly, financial coaches and partnership. We're open sourcing this, and I hope we see all of these things flourish. My son Lincoln is working on, will be working this summer. We're partnering with players in the NBA in every different city who are going to be, ambassadors for this in the cities in which they occupy. So lots of exciting things coming, but thank you for the work that you're doing. Maybe, one more? Yeah.
Question for you.
Don't mess this up.
I know, a lot of pressure. Thank you both so much. Synthetic biology, genetic engineering, what are your thoughts on accelerating evolution itself? It feels like AI and various new tools in the synthetic biology world are going to greatly accelerate evolution itself. I'm curious to your thoughts on that.
You take that one.
I actually did an event at my house on this subject, and I would like to say that with great power, only good things come. But with great power, both good and bad things come. And one of the things that we're going to have to just get our heads around is that you can't control that by just locking it down, because what that guarantees is the good stuff doesn't happen, but the bad stuff does. Because gray markets and black markets around all technology always develop. So we want the good bots to be better than the bad bots. I think when it comes to human biology, we're going to have a lot of coordination with government. Like I said, this distance between Silicon Valley and Washington needs to shrink. But I do think you probably saw what Peter Thiel, started, which is an enhanced Olympics. We are looking at a future where there will be humans who are altered with CRISPR and other technologies. And we are going to have a conversation about what that means, right? And, it is I'm an optimist. And I think you can go through any historical epic of innovation and entrepreneurialism and breakthrough, and there's a lot of fear. This one, because the power of the tool is greater than all that came before it, it will have a lot more fear than others. I worry about the geopolitical risks that come out of that. I worry about, the risk to our kids and other stuff. But there's no hiding from it. There's no putting the genie, back in the bottle. We just need to get active. We need to ask the questions, and we need to participate in the conversation.
Yeah, I agree. I think we got to move fast. Slowing down is not the answer. We're talking about nuclear power earlier. Is being too cautious assures you that you're not going to be in the game, and therefore you have no ability to control it.
One request before we get out. The siren's going to stand up, Bob. We're taking a selfie with everybody.
Okay, let's do it.
All right. Thank you all for having us. All right. Lincoln, thank you for being here.